Hi, I'm Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, and I'm proud to welcome you to a very special event celebrating what she's made of. I know today will be exciting, informative, and empowering. And the keynote speaker, Carla Harris, will give us life lessons as we learn what she's made of. Carla is an inspirational New Yorker who has broken barriers across industries as a business leader, author, and gospel singer. She proves that New York women are strong, fearless, and we know how to work together to get things done. While women have gained leadership positions and broken glass ceilings in every field, the pandemic has also had devastating effects on many women in the workforce. But I know that working together and lifting each other up, our collective power creates real impactful change. And New York women can come back stronger and more empowered than ever before. And now it's my pleasure to welcome you to What She's Made of 2021.
And I'm Susanna Shank, co-chair for this event. It is our honor to welcome you to a very special edition of What She's Made of.
Although we're disappointed that we can't meet in person, no matter the format, What She's Made of is always an inspiring and empowering occasion. We're so excited that you've chosen to join us for the next 90 minutes.
We are thrilled to welcome Carla Harris back to Buffalo and look forward to hearing her insights on the critical importance of women leaders at every level.
Carla will also be on hand to take your questions live. Plus, we have some incredible performances of women in our community to share with you.
We also have a very special spotlight on some of the unsung women heroes of Western New York coming your way in the next hour.
We hope you're as excited as we are to get started. But before we get to the many people and organizations who made this event possible.
First, thank you to our presenting sponsor, M&T Bank, for their continued belief in our mission and for being a company consciously working to empower women.
To our glass ceiling sponsors, Baker Hostetler, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, and Morgan Stanley.
To our Trailblazer sponsors, Athenix, Buffalo Bills, Harmac, and Harder, Seacrest, and Emery, LLP.
And a very special thank you to our sponsors and supporters who you can find listed in the Event Eat program.
If you're familiar with Western New York Women's Foundation, you know that we are committed to creating opportunities for all women to learn, earn, and lead.
We believe that working together to tackle issues that women struggle with, such as childcare, pay equity, and professional advancement, are the best ways to move our community forward.
We look forward to sharing more of our work with you during this event. It takes a lot of vision and energy to accomplish the breadth of work that we do. It is thanks to you and your support that we are igniting social change across our community.
Because of you, in the last year, we launched the Buffalo Women's Economic Mobility Hub, designed to offer critical support to mothers pursuing education and training toward a family-sustaining job.
Thanks to you, our Moms from Education to Employment initiative is lifting families out of poverty at 3 local community colleges.
And because of you, Western New York is advancing women into greater positions of leadership to create a more robust and equitable community.
So thank you to each of you for supporting our work by being here this afternoon.
You are joining us on a mission to advance gender equity and to move Western New York forward. Your generosity makes a real difference in people's lives.
The women of Western New York are strong, passionate, and powerful. Today, we celebrate them as the unsung heroes of Western New York. Women like Barbara Hayes, honored by What She's Made of sponsor Buffalo Seminary. Barbara and her family are committed to providing exceptional educational opportunities for young women in Western New York. We thank them for their support and vision. Women like Patricia Garman, honored by her daughter Melissa Baumgart. Patricia was one of the founders of the Western New York Women's Foundation, and our Legacy Giving Society bears her name as a tribute to her foresight, dedication, and commitment. Melissa writes, "She was my North Star, and with her quiet strength, always showed others what she was made of." Women like Heather Gresham, honored by Western New York Women's Foundation sponsor, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York. Heather is a natural problem solver, always looking for better solutions. Heather leads their Diversity and Inclusion Council and was named one of Business First's People on the Move. She inspires us daily. Women like Kaylee Kwitek, honored by Western New York Women's Foundation sponsor Ingram Micro. Kaylee is co-founder of her own charity, Kaylee's Kindness Foundation, inspired by her own stage 4 cancer diagnosis. Peer and social support to teenage girls living with cancer. To date, her work has touched the lives of over 80 young adults dealing with a cancer diagnosis. Thank you for your hard work and dedication, Kaylee. Stay tuned later in the program as we spotlight more of these incredible women. Plus, you can visit the Western New York Women's Foundation's Facebook page to view a full gallery of all honorees. Thanks to each and every one of you for all you do in our community.
We're all searching for ways to connect. We long to be part of a group we believe in, a group that helps define who we are. This is what it means to be part of a community. At M&T Bank, supporting all the important communities our customers are part of is nothing new. To enable, encourage, and empower people and communities to thrive, there's nothing more important.
Imagine being a single parent, all alone, full-time work, full-time school, no help from anybody, not even your community.
My son, he has a disability. He's a preschooler, and it has been very difficult with me finding childcare for him because of his disability.
I am trying hard to have a brighter future, not only for myself, but for my daughter.
The Western New York Women's Foundation has worked tirelessly for over 20 years to advocate for women.
The Western New York Women's Foundation is a data-driven, respected voice in our community, working on issues affecting women. This organization recognizes that one policy can change the lives of thousands of women.
There's about 100,000 children in the Western New York region under the age of 6. And so we want to make sure that children and their families are supported. So without the Western New York Women's Foundation, who would be speaking up for young children?
So we ask ourselves every day, what is the relevance of Western New York Women's Foundation? What happens if we don't exist? And we know that the leading voice for women, for gender equity, and particularly for childcare as an essential workforce support would not exist in this community if it wasn't for this organization.
Our work is more important than ever before as our resources are stretched to the breaking point during this crisis.
It's a very hard balance to try to work from home, or if you're an essential worker like myself, to go into work and not have childcare. So it's really important that these services are given to the community so that we can make ends meet.
These programs and how far they reach, they're not just reaching, young women, but they're reaching like another generation on top of this one.
The challenges that I'm facing right now are difficult, but they're not unique. And the Women's Foundation is working to help to make those difficulties a little bit less severe. I am one of those parents that have benefited from the Western New York Women's Foundation.
And we know that policymakers and decision makers are much more apt to listen when we are united in our voices. Region's success are a part of that and a part of that movement. We know that it will only have really positive benefits for young children.
And we know that the influence that we can have over systems change, and particularly policy and funding being driven to our region, would not exist if the Western New York Women's Foundation did not exist.
It's the Western New York Women's Foundation and the SPRE program that are helping women like me.
The person that you're investing in today may be just the person who solves and makes a big problem for us. Your support means we can keep pushing forward to make life easier for women in our community.
Today, we need your help to continue the critical work on behalf of women in Western New York.
We are asking you right now to help raise the money we need to continue supporting, empowering, and inspiring women in our community.
We have an extra special reason for you to donate today.
Today only, every donation we receive will enter you in a drawing to win this gorgeous pearl necklace.
Reeds has generously donated this beautiful necklace in honor of our keynote speaker Carla Harris's Pearls of Intentional Leadership. This pearl necklace could be yours, plus you'll be taking a stand for women in our community.
Your dollar and my dollar go further when we do it together. Now's the time for all of us to stand up for women.
Giving is incredibly easy. Just click the donate button at the top of this page or scan the QR code under the chat box with your phone.
The online forms only take a few moments to complete, and every dollar makes a big difference.
Thank you to every one of you for stepping up to support the efforts of the Western New York Women's Foundation.
Together, we're catalyzing change in our community.
Together, we're driving solutions to advance gender equity and move Western New York forward.
Together, we can make sure every woman has the opportunity to learn, earn, and lead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your support. We know the pandemic has disproportionately impacted women, and especially women business owners. Almost 60% of women business owners say it'll take longer than 6 months for their business to return to pre-pandemic levels. Happily, the Western New York Women's Foundation has created the Western New York Women-Owned Business Directory, and this week, many women-owned restaurants in the directory are offering specials if you mention the Western New York Women's Foundation. So let's shop local, support women, and recover together.
Hi, I'm Ariana McKnight and I live in Rochester, New York. What does being bold mean to you? Being bold means not being afraid to stand up for what you truly believe in. It means taking a stand for yourself and for others, and being willing to speak up in uncomfortable situations. We must be courageous, strong, and confident. Boldness also means advocating for those who cannot speak up for themselves. As a Girl Scout member, I remember to always represent the true GIRL qualities of being a go-getter, innovator, risk-taker, and leader. What do girls need to have to build equity in their lives, education, communities, families, and so forth? In order to build equity in their lives, education, communities, and families, girls need to remember that they are strong and have the ability to persevere through challenging times. Girls need to advocate for themselves and kindle their inner strength. It is important to have a strong support system and surround themselves with people that will community. Girls need to find out what they are truly passionate about and work hard to make their dream a reality. They need to seek out girl-led organizations and build relationships that will empower girls to be their best selves. What is it like being a girl where you are? In my community, I am so fortunate to be surrounded by family and friends that support my dreams and aspirations for the future. I participate in a wide variety of organizations such as Girl Scouts, Girl Up, Girls on the Run, and the Genesee Women's Grant Making Committee. and have greatly diversified my skill set and leadership qualities. I have many opportunities to volunteer and give back to my community through my church, the Henrietta Youth Asset Team, and the Girl Scouts. I put effort daily into making sure that I model the characteristics of being a GIRL and work to improve each and every day. What stands in the way of girls in your community from experiencing equity? In my community, what stands in the way of girls from experiencing equity are negative influences. Girls tend to try and fit in with a crowd, and many times they get stuck in the wrong crowd. They have dreams and aspirations, but dream killers that they surround themselves with block their vision for the future. Girls are afraid to stand up and speak out about topics that they are passionate about. Girls get stuck on social media, and their perspective is clouded by false stereotypes. Girls need to advocate and stay strong in the midst of adversity. There are many reasons why girls encounter problems being strong, but now, more than ever, girls need to persevere through difficulty, overcome obstacles, and work hard to be the best girl they can be. Happy International Day of the Girl 2020!
I am Dr. Hope Fisher, Medical Director at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York. I'm a clinician. I'm a mom. I can't really remember a time where I didn't want to be involved in medicine, so I think it kind of chose me. I am a part of Blue Cross Blue Shield largely because we are so involved in the community. Western New York is my home, so why wouldn't I want to give back to a community that has poured so much into me? I'm Dr. Hope Fisher. I'm making a difference as part of Blue.
Up next, we have Carla Harris's keynote presentation. After Carla's keynote, she will be accepting questions from you. To submit a question, click on Q&A above the chat box. Select What She's Made of Staff from the drop-down and type your question in the box. Hit Submit Question and it'll go straight to our moderator. Feel free to submit questions at any point during Carla's presentation. They will all be saved and ready for the Q&A session later. And now, here's Western New York Women's Foundation Board Chair Andrea Vossler to kick things off.
Welcome to our 13th annual What She's Made Of. My name is Andrea Vossler, and I am proud to serve as board chair of the Western New York Women's Foundation. We are thrilled that you have joined us for this powerful event, Saluting Women in Leadership. At the foundation, we are committed to creating opportunities for all women to learn, earn, and lead. With our dual focus on women's economic empowerment and women's leadership, our work has never been more critical. Women are one of the region's greatest assets. Data shows that women are particularly skilled at leading during a crisis, and that women in corporate leadership increase productivity, ethics, and organizational effectiveness. Our All In initiative works with employers to help women advance in their careers and contribute to a more gender-inclusive and equitable workplace. All In also supports individual women who aspire to positions of leadership by offering mentorship, professional development, and a community of like-minded professionals across all sectors. We know that women can do great things when we work together. And today we are proud to welcome Carla Harris, a business leader, author, and gospel singer, to What She's Made Of, to share her pearls of intentional leadership. We hope you will be inspired by what Carla has to share with us today and turn that inspiration into action in your career, at your workplace, and in support of your women colleagues. Now, it is my honor to introduce Carla. Carla is a vice chairman, managing director, and senior client advisor at Morgan Stanley. In her 30-year career, Ms. Harris has had extensive industry experience in technology, media, retail, industrial, and healthcare sectors, among many others. In August 2013, Carla was appointed by President Barack Obama to chair the National Women's Business Council. Carla has been named to Fortune magazine's list of the 50 most powerful Black executives in corporate America, U.S. Banker's top 25 most powerful women in finance, and to Essence magazine's list of the 50 women who are shaping the world. Prior to joining Morgan Stanley, Carla received her MBA from Harvard Business School and her bachelor's in economics from Harvard University. Carla is actively involved in her community and believes that we are blessed so that we can be a blessing to someone else. Carla is also a gospel singer and has performed 5 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall and has written 2 books, Strategize to Win and Expect to Win. Carla, on behalf of the foundation, I am pleased to welcome you here tonight, and I'm excited to hear your pearls of intentional leadership. Take it away.
Well, hello, ladies. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. And it gives me such great joy to be able to share with you something I like to call Carla's Pearls, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman on Wall Street as of this summer for 34 years. I dare say that I have learned a few things about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And frankly, that's what the pearls are all about. I'm particularly excited today that I'm going to talk about the pearls of what I like to call intentional leadership. Because I will tell you that since we have been in this lockdown, as I like to call it, protocol, I've realized and I've reflected on these 3 decades on the street. And I realized that we are in an environment that calls for a different type of leadership. When I started on Wall Street back in 1987, I would argue that the prevailing style of leadership force. And let's face it, if you were a boomer or you're an older Xer, if your boss said to jump, the answer was how high. And in the environment that we're in now, if you say jump, millennials and Zers will say why. So it is a very different environment that calls for you to be a different kind of leader than the leader that you might have grown up underneath in your career. And I would argue that we are in this environment that calls for intentional leadership. And I believe you must be intentional around 8 things. The first thing, or the first pearl, as I like to call it, that you must be intentional about is your authenticity. Your authenticity, ladies, it's your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And the day that you received your current opportunity, somebody else didn't get the job, because you were the best person for the job. So the last thing any of us should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. Anytime that you're trying to speak or behave in a way that is inauthentic to who you really are, that's when you create the competitive disadvantage, because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your client or your colleagues are saying, yet are not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to demonstrate that quick twitch response, and valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with that person on the other side of the conversation. As quiet as it's kept, ladies, I've learned after you, they absolutely want some of that. If your success, like mine, depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self into that environment. When you bring your authentic self into any environment, people trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. When we went into this shelter-in-place protocol, I began receiving phone calls from all over the country from people who were in the C-suite across all industries. And the questions that I received: how do I lead in this moment? How do I motivate and inspire my people when we are not in the same place? How do I keep people focused and motivated to deliver the objectives that we have for this year, notwithstanding the environment that we're in, when we're not in the same place? How do I help people divide the personal and the professional when it's all happening in the personal context? And I said to these leaders starting in April 2020, and I continue to say today, that as a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must do 3 things in the environment that we're in now. You must be visible, you must be transparent, and you must be empathetic. Whenever we are in environments like we're in now, that is marked by mass uncertainty, like we all have been experiencing over the last 15 months, people crave stability, any kind of stability. And your people are used to being able to see you. So even though you might argue that this is a poor substitute for being in the same office building, it is indeed a substitute and gives them a measure of stability because they can see you. So leveraging technology so your people can see you is critical during these times. The second thing is that you must be transparent. You must be transparent about what you know, what you don't know, and when you know it. Here's when we're planning on returning to the office. Here are the 3 indicators that we're waiting on in order to give us some clue as to when we might go back in the office. Here are the roles that we know we will absolutely need on the other side of the pandemic crisis. And here are the roles that we're pretty sure we're not going to need again. Being transparent will also underscore your authenticity. It will reinforce your authenticity. But more importantly, it's the thing that you need in order for your people to trust you. And trust will be critical as we go forward because we are all going into territories unknown. And let's face it, every day that we're living in 2021, we're walking into territories unknown. Nobody has the playbook on what things look like on the other side of the pandemic crisis or what it looks like on the other side of the social unrest that we all witnessed last summer. And frankly, that is still ongoing. So it's important that you are transparent about those things that you know and leverage the information that is not confidential, of course, that you can use as a leader to build greater transparency between you and your people. And the third thing that you must do is you must be empathetic. Now is not the time to behave as a leader as if what we have all been going through is not affecting you. It is the first time in my 34-year career that we have truly had a shared experience. There's not a person on the planet that hasn't been touched in some way by COVID-19. There isn't a person on the planet that hasn't felt some kind of way witnessing the social unrest on the back of racial inequities in this country and frankly around the world. Now is the time, if you are currently sitting in a leadership seat or if you aspire to sit in a leadership seat, now is the time to show that empathy. Now is the time to instigate, provoke, motivate the courageous conversations. You have an outsized opportunity as a leader to provoke those kinds of conversations. Hey, I'd like to understand how you're feeling about what is going on in our community. I'm not sure I've had this experience, so I'm not sure I'm processing it in the way that I probably should. And I'd like to understand that better so that I can lead better in this moment. Can you spend 15 minutes with me having a conversation about this? Those are the kinds of conversation. That's the script that you can deliver. And I know that it might feel a little bit scary if you've never had these kinds of conversations before. And let's face it, there were a whole lot of things that we did not discuss in the workplace before we went into this shelter-in-place protocol. Those things that are now fair game to talk about. And I understand that you might have a little bit of fear, but understand, first of all, fear has no place in your success equation as a leader. And number two, if you have the courage to ask the question, the person on the other side of the question will have the grace to answer you. You need not fear, but you can have some of those conversations now, which will unlock the productivity in your environment. Anytime there are things that we cannot talk about, we create obstacles that ultimately will impair productivity. But when we can remove those obstacles, when we can have conversations freely, now you have unlocked the opportunity to have outsized productivity in your environment because people can bring all of who they are into that environment. And I will tell you, anytime any of us can be who we really are, we always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in that leadership seat. The second pearl that you must be intentional about is building trust. We are all competing in some way around innovation. It is the dominant competitive parameter. And we are all in an environment of unknowns right now. And in order for you to be able to lead in an impactful way into unknown territory, your people must trust you. So the $64,000 question is, how do you build trust? And the way that you build trust is you simply deliver over and over and over again. I want to challenge you right now to think about the people in your personal life that you trust. Maybe you're thinking about the folks that are taking care of your kids. Maybe you're thinking about the people who are looking after your parents. Maybe you're thinking about that one person, the only person that you'll let get near your hair with a pair of shears. And maybe you're thinking about that one restaurant that you always go to when it is an important event because you know the food is outstanding and the service is impeccable. Why do you trust these people? Because they have delivered over and over and over again. Whenever I'm trying to get to know a client and penetrate a relationship, I try to think of 4 things that I can do for that client before I ever ask for anything. And oh, by the way, people will always tell you what they value. They will always tell you what they value. You need only ask the question and create the space where they can deliver to you that which they value. And you can subsequently strategize on how you can deliver that thing that they value to them over and over again. So let me give you an example. I'm speaking to a client and they tell me that they're an avid runner, that they love running, that it is the key to their sanity, if you will. So now I think about 4 things that I can deliver around that fact. Maybe I say to the client, hey, here's an article about running that can increase your time. I thought you might enjoy this. Hey, by the way, have you tried the new Nike shoe? I understand it has unbelievable support. I have a friend that's at Nike that can walk you through all of the features on the shoe. Oh, by the way, are you running in the Berlin Marathon? I have a group of friends that are already there. I can connect you so that when you land, there's a community that you can engage with because I understand that there is currency in connections. And then maybe I say, oh, by the way, do you have a good orthopod? Every runner needs to have an orthopedic surgeon on speed dial. I know somebody that might be great for you. I try to think of 4 things that I can do before I ever ask for anything. So by the time that I ask for something, now the client is thinking, wow, I wasn't thinking about giving Morgan Stanley any of that business, but Carla has done A, she's done B, she's done C, she's done D. Maybe I'll give them a little bit of this transaction. And ladies, that's all I need is a little bit of an opening. I can wiggle my hips through that and land and expand. But more importantly, they trust me enough to give me the shot. The third pearl of intentional leadership is creating clarity. Now, I know I've just said that we're all competing in some way around innovation. It is the dominant competitive parameter, which means that we will go into territories unknown. Yet, as a powerful, impactful, influential leader, your job is to create clarity, even when you cannot see. It is your job to define what success looks like for the team. When you define what success looks like, when people know exactly what they're playing for, then I believe that they are motivated and inspired to deliver beyond that which has already been defined. But when you fail to define what success looks like, then you create a complete level of frustration on the food chain. You know that you should be able to get more from your team, but you don't understand why you're not getting it. Your team knows that you are unhappy, but they don't know what it takes to get you to happy. And if you can define what success looks like, now you can get people motivated and you can get them inspired to stay with you and to stay under your leadership and to really, really soar. I will tell you that I've had the privilege of starting the Multicultural Innovation Lab at Morgan Stanley. And there were times when I was not sure what the next step should have been in order to get us to market. And the lab, frankly, is an in-house accelerator that attracts entrepreneurs of color and entrepreneurs that are females, and we give them 3 things. We give them cash. We give them 6 months of content to help them to develop from being a founder to a CEO. And we also connect them to some of our largest investment banking clients to accelerate the scaling of their business. Nobody on Wall Street had done anything like this before, so I couldn't steal from the competition. Nobody within Morgan Stanley had done anything like this before, so I could not leverage internal intellect. And in those moments when I was not sure what the next step should have been, I was tempted, frankly, to get a little bit paralyzed because it hadn't been done before. But I realized in order to motivate and inspire and continue to excite the team and to be able to maintain and retain this great talent that I had recruited for this endeavor, that I had to define what success looked like and not let the fear of being wrong paralyze and impede my momentum. So I would define what success looked like even for the day. Or if I couldn't do it for the day, I would do it from the morning. And I'd say, here's what we're going to do from 9 to 12. And we're going to solve this problem. 12 to 2, we'll take a break. From 2 to 5, we'll test the hypothesis, and then we'll turn to the next problem. So even when you cannot define what success looks like for the year or the quarter or the month or the week, define success for a finite period of time. And don't be so afraid of being wrong. If you're wrong, once you start on the journey, then you simply take a page out of the technology industry's playbook. You fail fast, extract the learning, let the learning infect your next try and impact your next success. The next pearl of intentional leadership is creating other leaders. If you are a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must understand that you must be disproportionately focused on creating other leaders, for that is how you amplify your impact in your organization. If all roads lead back to you, then by definition, your success and the organization's success is going to be capped because you are one woman or you might be one man. It is your job to make sure that you are taking those things that allowed you to cut your leadership teeth, that you are now intentionally giving those things to other prospective leaders so that they can cut their leadership teeth and you can create more leaders in your organizations to further penetrate your client base, to expand your footprint, to maintain your leadership in your industry. It is critical that you do that. And I will tell you that this was a tough one for me. This was a tough pearl to acquire because I am a natural executor and I'm one of those folks that can create capacity even with a full plate. But there were two things that advanced me on my own leadership journey. The first is that I heard my CEO and chairman say that he focuses on only those things that the CEO can do. If anybody else on his team can do anything on his list, it should not be on his list. Translation in my mind when I heard this is just because you can, Carla, doesn't mean you should. Leaders, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Remember that every moment that you spend executing, you are using some of the white space that you could use to advance you on your journey to being that person with a powerful vision, with being that person that could motivate and inspire people to deliver beyond that which they thought they could do. It's one more moment away from truly finding opportunity amidst chaos, one more moment away from transforming a culture in a tempestuous environment. It is your job to make sure that you are creating these other leaders. The next thing that helped me along my journey is I had to invoke a little bit of baseball imagery. I said, Carla, the powerful capital markets banker, hundreds of capital markets transactions, generating millions of dollars of revenue for the firm. She's standing on first base. But Carla, the visionary leader that could motivate and inspire others, the person that can create products out of a blank sheet of paper that could become part of the foundation of our growth strategy for the next 10 years, she's standing on second base. Carla, you cannot get to second base with your foot still on first. You got to be willing to let it go. It was powerful imagery for me as I advanced myself on my own leadership journey. And remember, ladies, leadership is a journey from execution to empowerment. Create other leaders. The next pearl of intentional leadership is diversity. Now, I know I don't need to spend a lot of time on that topic with this audience, but let me just give you a couple of thoughts. You must be intentional about diversity no matter who you are, because it will not just happen. Trust me, it will not just happen. We are all vulnerable to unconscious bias, and I'll give you evidence of my own. I just shared the story of creating the Multicultural Innovation Lab at Morgan Stanley. 18 months into that journey, I looked up and my entire team was women. All women, not an ounce of testosterone to be seen anywhere. And I knew immediately that I had a gap in my go-to-market strategy. Ladies, if you do not have diverse thinking at your decision-making table, you will have a gap in your go-to-market strategy, and it will expose you unnecessarily to outsized competitive threats. You must be intentional, as I was, in making sure that my next 2 hires were men. Whenever you are making a personnel decision, leaders, you must stop and ask yourself, are the things that are driving those decisions, are they facts or are they feelings? It's important that you can discern the difference, because so often we resort to our feeling about somebody, our perception about their ability to take on this risk, our perception about whether or not they will be successful, as opposed to the facts. And if you end up with a lack of facts for both candidates, then again, it's incumbent upon you to take the time to gather the facts, to talk to people, to drive your decision, as opposed to the feelings. And when you are in a fast-paced, intense, competitive environment, it is easy to unconsciously default to the feelings. We are all competing around innovation. So again, it is imperative that you have diversity. And let me give you the business case. If you are competing around innovation and you need that one idea in order to obtain and retain a leadership position, then you need a lot of ideas in that room, because after all, innovation is born from ideas. If you need a lot of ideas in the room, you need a lot of perspectives in the room, because after all, ideas are born from perspectives. If you need a lot of perspectives in the room, you better have a lot of experiences in the room, because perspectives are born from experiences. And if you need a lot of experiences in the room, you better have a lot of different people in the room, because experiences are born from people. So you must start with a lot of different people in the room to get to that one innovative idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position in your industry. That is the business case around diversity. And if you aren't with me yet, let me give you another thought. When I walked out of Harvard Business School almost 34 years ago, every single company that came to Harvard Business School sold this idea of a meritocracy. And every company that came was a part of corporate America, representing 6 white men at the top. That's what excellence looked like in corporate America. 6 white men at the top. There was nothing strange about that. Pick the company: IBM, General Motors, Goldman Sachs, Ford Motor Company, Morgan Stanley, Procter & Gamble, HP. Pick the company. That's what excellence looked like. So I knew that as a woman and a woman of color, if I wanted to play, that I had to be comfortable being the first and the only in many rooms. But that is not the environment that millennials and Zers have grown up in. The millennials and Zers, who are quickly becoming the dominant population in the workforce, they've grown up in a very different environment. They've seen women lead. They might have a mother who's in the C-suite. They might have a mother who's driving the highest profile nonprofit in their city or their town. They've gone to elite schools where there's a smart Indian kid on the left, smart Black kid on the right, smart Hispanic kid sitting in front of them, smart Asian kid sitting behind them. That's what excellence looks like. So when they're looking to join organizations, they're looking for their definition of excellence. And if they don't see it, they won't go. And if they go, they won't stay. They care very much about the jerseys that they're wearing. We might have cared about the money, the opportunity, the career trajectory, the training, but they care very much about whether or not the organizations that they're joining and the people that they may work with, that their values are aligned with theirs. So it is important that you are thoughtful about diversity, especially among your senior ranks, because that is what they see. That is who they interact with when they're thinking about joining your organization. And if they don't see it, they won't go, and it will compromise your objective to be the employer of choice in your industry. And if you're not with me yet, I'm going to give you my last argument around diversity. It used to be the case that companies had 3 constituents: the shareholders, the customers, the employees, and each of these constituents had a powerful tool. Your shareholders, they could sell your stock. Your customers could vote with their feet and not buy your products and services. And your employees, well, they could quit. But today, there's a 4th constituent, and it's called community. And it's not local, it's global. And it too has a powerful tool. It's called social media. Within seconds, you can have massive brand degradation. Within seconds, you could lose billions of dollars of market cap. So it is important that you are intentional as a powerful leader around diversity. It will not just happen. The next pearl of intentional leadership is innovation. Now, I've made the case that we are all competing in some way around innovation. It is the dominant competitive parameter. And if you're going to teach your teams to have that strong muscle of innovation, you must teach them how to fail. You must teach them how to fail. If people are deathly afraid of failing, they will never reach far enough to truly innovate. Well, how do you teach people how to fail? You simply celebrate the failures. You might try this the next time somebody on your team takes a risk and it doesn't work out. Of course, you must be authentic about the facts if it didn't work out. But perhaps you now say, oh, Dan, that was a huge mistake. That might even cost us this quarter. But let's all give Dan a hand because he took the risk. And because he took the risk, we now know the following three things. And we can use these things in our next try, or we can use these things for this new product, or we can use these three things as we try to go into a new market segment. It is important as a powerful, impactful, influential leader that when somebody on your team takes a risk and it doesn't work out, you must be productive and constructive in your response. If you have a markedly adverse reaction, then the person on the other side of the conversation with you, and more importantly, those who are witnessing that conversation, they will never go there. As my grandmother used to say, a burnt child is afraid of fire. And if they believe it's going to be a markedly adverse reaction, they will never truly reach far enough to innovate in a way that will allow your organization to truly lead in the marketplace. The next pearl of intentional leadership is inclusivity. Before we went into this shelter-in-place protocol, I had the privilege and honor of traveling all over the world to share the pearls. And inevitably, when I would actually visit a company and on their campus, they would say, well, since you're on our campus, can you spend an hour with the CEO or an hour with the CEO and his or her direct reports? And inevitably, behind closed doors, the question that would come up is, how do you show up every day as an inclusive leader? I've read about it. I intellectually understand it. But what does it mean to manifest it, to walk the walk every day? And if you want to show up as an inclusive leader, all you need to do is solicit other people's voices. Solicit other people's voices. I'd like you to try this the next 4 times that you pull your teams together. Here's the problem that we're trying to solve today. I'll get us started with this conversation, not because I'm the oldest, most seasoned person in the room, but, I'll get us started in this conversation. Now, Abby, I'd like you to add on to the argument. Bill, I'd like you to add on to what Abby has said. Now, Chloe, I'd actually like you to play devil's advocate. How would you completely blow up this argument? Give me the other side. Where are the gaps? And Damon, I'd like you to add on to what Chloe has said. What have you done? As a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you've done 2 very important things. The first thing that you've done is that you've said, I see you. Not only did you invite them into the conversation, but you explicitly invited them into the conversation by name, which means you must engage enough with your teams so that you can authentically invite them into the conversation, invite them into the solution-making process, invite them to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as you reimagine the future on the other side of this COVID-19 crisis. And who doesn't value being seen by the boss? The second most important thing that you've done is that you said, I hear you. Not only did you specifically invite them into the conversation by name, but you invited them in particular to support or refute the argument that was on the floor. And guess what, ladies? Everybody values being heard. Everybody values being heard. When you say to anybody on the other side of the conversation, I hear you, or let me repeat what I think I heard you say, the person on the other side of the conversation with you is now saying, wow, she was listening. Wow, she heard me. And you have just generated immediate currency in that exchange, currency that you can now reinvest back into that relationship. But more importantly, here's the intended consequence of what you have done. You have now put everybody's fingerprints on the blueprint. Everybody on your team is now equally invested in the success or failure of that endeavor. And ladies, it doesn't get any better than that. And the last pearl of intentional leadership is voice. If you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must be willing to call a thing, no matter how bad that thing might be. And I would argue the worse the thing is, the more important it is for you to put your voice behind whatever it is. If you fail to call a thing, now you mitigate the transparency that you've been trying to build, and you will therefore impact the trust that is so critical to being able to lead your clients and your colleagues into territories unknown. If you fail to call a thing, now you compromise the authenticity that you've worked so hard to bring into your environment and to bring into those relationships. And the only reason that people don't exercise their voices, I have found, frankly, is that they're scared. They're just scared. And as I said earlier, fear has no place in your success equation. Anytime you approach anything in your life, personally or professionally, from a position of fear, you will always underpenetrate that opportunity. And whenever I feel it creeping up the back of my neck, I just remind myself of that old Southern saying, fear is just false evidence of things appearing real. It's really not there. What's the worst that can happen if you take any kind of risk, especially around your voice, and it doesn't work out? You fail. But guess what? Failure always brings you a gift. Now you know how to do it better. Now you know how to say it differently. Now you know how to deliver with success. At the margin, always worth taking the risk. And in environments like we're in now, where we really can't call what the other side of this looks like, you may be faced with opportunities to exercise your voice, especially as a woman, especially as a person of color in this environment. Companies for the first time are soliciting our voices about what the social unrest means. How can they create an inclusive environment? What could they possibly do better? How do they sustain this moment and don't go backwards in the other direction? Do not let your anger impede your opportunity. I know that you might feel a little angry right now because you're thinking, why are they asking me now? I've been here for 15 years, 20 years. Nobody ever asked me what I thought about. Do not let your anger impede your opportunity. Now is the time where you can put your imprimatur on the future. Don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder to tell you this is what the new looks like, when you have ample opportunity right now to exercise your voice and put your imprimatur on the new blueprint. And every organization has to create a new blueprint going forward. And as I close, while I have given you tell you that the strand that holds all of these pearls together, it's courage. It's courage, because it takes courage to call a thing. We have all been in meetings when we knew something should have been said, and we all simply looked down at our shoes. It takes courage to engage enough with your teams that you can authentically invite them into the conversation, authentically invite them into reimagining the future, authentically invite them to approach their roles with a blank sheet of paper mentality, i.e., if you had to do what you're doing starting from scratch today with the same outcome, what might you do differently? How would you leverage technology differently? Not use, but leverage technology. How would you think about collaborations, relationships, and partnerships? Because it's not all about proprietary anymore. There is value, and the market will value partnerships and collaborations more than things that are proprietary these days. It takes courage to really teach people how to innovate, especially people who are deathly afraid of failing, like millennials and Zers. Let's face it, we have not given them the opportunity to develop the muscle of resilience the way boomers and older Xers were able to develop that muscle. So yes, leaders, it is incumbent upon you in the workplace to teach that resilience, therefore to give them an appetite for risk-taking and to innovate. It takes courage to be thoughtful and intentional about diversity. It will not just happen on its own. And it takes courage to constantly check your environment to make sure there is equal access to opportunity. As a leader, you should afford yourself of all the talent, all the intellect that is present in your environment and not compromise your ability to lead because you're only using a segment of the population. It takes courage to create other leaders, especially if you are unsure of your own leadership trajectory. It takes courage to create clarity when you cannot see. And it takes courage to engage enough with people to build their trust, to invest in that relationship currency that is so critical to your maximizing your success as a leader. And it takes courage to bring your authentic self into any environment, which is why so many people are challenged to do so. If you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must be intentional and expect and strategize to win. I thank you, and I'm so looking forward to the questions and the conversation with Sujata.
Thank you, Carla. What a fantastic presentation. I wore my pearls today in your honor. I am Sujata Yalamanchili. I am a past board member of the Western New York Women's Foundation and a current emeriti member. In my day job, I am an attorney and a partner at the Buffalo law firm of Hodgson Russ, and delighted to work with you and to talk to you. Our chat room has been active during the program. And I've got a number of questions too, but if you don't mind, we'll just jump right in and get started. So you talked about inclusivity and gave some great specific examples, which I really appreciated. But in so many of our workplaces and in our cultures at work, inclusivity only goes so far, and people are not welcome to be their authentic self. So whether you're a woman, a minority, an LGBTQ person, I remember early in my career, before I had children, someone told me, you know, it's okay to have children, but don't put pictures of them up because then that labels you as a mother. So how do you create a culture, and that was obviously a long time ago, but how do you create a culture of true inclusivity where your people around you and your subordinates perhaps can really be their authentic selves and bring it all to work?
Yes. Well, first of all, Sujata, thank you so much for that question. And I tell people the way that you can bring all of you into any environment, and I'm going to answer both sides of that. How do you create the culture, and then how do you do it? How do you bring all of you into the environment? So first of all, as a leader, you have to be intentional about creating that culture, which means you must be authentic, number one. Number two, you must also celebrate and call out when people are bringing their authentic selves, and especially in an environment like yours and mine, where our success depends upon our ability to penetrate relationships. And as I said, the easiest way to do that is to bring all of you into the environment, because most people are compromised to bring all of themselves into the environment. But when they see someone who's doing it, they are attracted to that. That actually solidifies your relationship with that client. So as a leader, you need to create it where somebody brings, somebody exposes themselves as a motorcycle rider, or somebody exposes themselves as somebody who's an avid crocheter. Then you should talk about that openly in the environment, and you should celebrate that, and you should try to find a way to connect that authenticity to what they're doing actually in the workplace and how that might give them an advantage. So underscoring it, talking about it, celebrating it is what you can do as the person who is creating the culture. Now, how do you bring all of you into any environment? The first thing is that you must know who you are. And Sujata, I don't say that lightly, because pre-pandemic, we were all running around so fast that we failed to say, who am I today in 2019 relative to who I am in 2012? Am I still a person that is a very analytical and quantitative person, or I'm really a qualitative person? Am I still a morning person, or I'm actually a night owl now? Who am I? That's the first key. Second, you must understand that we are all multifaceted. There's not one you. There is an intellectual you. There's a pensive you. There's a frivolous you. There's a quiet you. Right? So understand that we're all multifaceted and embrace that. Now, the third key to bringing all of you into any environment, now you can relax, because you can relax and walk into any environment and meet people exactly where they are. And the key is you don't have to have all of you on display. I think younger professionals make the mistake, and they feel like they are not bringing their authentic selves into the environment because they're not showing all of them. You don't have to show all of you. You can choose in any moment what facet of you is going to connect with the person on the other side of the conversation, or the 1,000 people below you on the stage, or the 13 people around the board table. You can decide in that moment which part of you will connect authentically.
Terrific answer. We have two questions that are kind of two sides of the same issue, which is someone asked, I'm not a naturally outspoken person, so how do I speak up and find my voice in my company? And then the other end of that spectrum is, how do you do that without being seen as bossy or too aggressive, especially for women? That's a label all of us are going to find at some point in our careers. So how do you find that balance and find your voice and confidence?
Yes. Okay. Let me start with the last piece. I would not be preoccupied with thinking about I'm bossy or too forward. That is what you are assuming other people are thinking. Now, every now and then somebody might tell you directly, but most of the time people don't. And you assume that is what they're thinking from their face or their actions, and don't create that narrative in your own mind. As I like to remind myself, you are not clairvoyant. So you do not know what they're thinking. So don't create this narrative in your own mind. That's number one. Number two, with respect to having your voice in the environment, it is about practice. If you find yourself going into 3 meetings and you haven't said anything, then you need to make it your business in the 4th meeting that you're going to ask a question, that you're going to make a comment, that you're going to ask somebody to clarify, but you have to get your voice in the room. When the organization hears your voice and they get used to hearing your voice, then they will solicit your voice. But you have to be intentional about making sure that you put it out there. And again, don't create the narrative in your own mind. Oh, I can't say that. Paul just said that. Oh, I don't know. That may sound like a frivolous comment. Put your comment out there, or, as I said, ask a question. You can show your intelligence, your engagement by asking a question. You can say something like, let me repeat what I think I heard you say. I want to make sure that I understand the point. And what you've done in repeating it is that you have now underscored the fact that you were listening, that you were engaged, and you may or may not have a question on the other side of that, but you got your voice in the room.
That's great advice. And when you ask someone to clarify or whatever, it makes them feel more empowered too. So you're creating a dynamic there that's very helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Great response. You've touched on this throughout your comments, but I wonder if you could specifically address, what are ways that you've found to be successful at empowering and supporting different generations in the workplace? We've got Gen Zs all the way up to boomers and maybe still greatest generation people right now in the workplace.
I will tell you, I am very thoughtful about making sure, as I said earlier, and soliciting people's voices. And I recognize that all of these generations have different work styles, and I honor them, right? So I don't get perturbed if I see a millennial or a Zer, on the phone. Now, I generally give them advice that if you have a boomer boss, don't sit in the office and be on your phone. That's going to drive them crazy. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that that's something that they do all the time as digital natives. So I don't allow myself to, to really get, overly vexed about it. That's number one. Number two, I also have observed that millennials and Zers need a lot of support and affirmation. So again, I make sure that I am consistent with respect to giving feedback. Now, if you happen to be a boomer like me, you really didn't get a lot of feedback. You were pretty much told, keep your head down, work hard. If you don't get fired, then you're doing okay. But that will never do for millennials and Zers. They need the constant feedback in order to stay motivated, to stay on the journey, if you will. And that's just part of what you have to do as a leader if you are leading, that generation of people. So I tell my fellow boomers and older Xers that these are the kinds of things that you need to do if you want to retain some of the best talent that's out there. And again, they're the dominant population in the workplace. So, and the same thing with Xers, I understand that they're more like boomers. So I tend to deal with them, very much like I was dealing with a colleague or a contemporary, but I'm much more thoughtful about millennials and Zers, about the feedback, about being literal. I used to tease them and say, if you told a boomer, clear the table, they'll take everything off the table. If you say to a millennial, clear the table, they'll take the plates off. So you have to be explicit. You have to say, take the plates off and the silverware and the glasses and the dirty napkins. I don't want anything on the table except the tablecloth, right? You have to be that explicit in the way that you give, the way that you give direction. And again, if you're a boomer leader, this is part of what you're going to have to do, being in that leadership seat.
Great comments. These are also two sort of related questions. One is, what's your best advice for staying connected and for networking in our new virtual world? But then also as a leader, I was struck during your comments and even now by the fact that so many of the things that you're talking about are hugely time intensive. If you supervise or lead more than a handful of people, this is a lot of work to give this kind of feedback and all of it. So how do you use technology to help you with this? Or do you think some of these things shouldn't be done with technology and there's no substitute for sort of in-person mentoring and development?
Well, I actually think that we can mentor and we can sponsor, frankly, even in this virtual environment. And I got to tell you, Sujata, unlike popular business press, I actually thought that having to communicate in this virtual environment was an advantage for women and for people of color, because for the first time, it created a level playing field. Because let's face it, it used to be the case that Paul may stop by Ted's office because they both play golf and they shoot the breeze, and Paul's down there for 30 minutes and you might have wanted to go by Ted's office, but you could never get in there because they're talking about golf, and you tell yourself, oh my goodness, I don't play golf. I have no way of entering this conversation. But, I'm going to have to wait for another time, or I don't know what I can talk to Ted about. But now we're in this environment and everybody has had to speak this way. So for the first time, you and Paul are on an even playing field. And now you need only send an email to Ted and say, before we went into the shelter in place protocol, I want to get 10 minutes with you. So I could talk about A, B, C, and D. So can I set up a 10-minute Zoom? And when you get to 9 minutes and 30 seconds, you say, I am a woman of my word. I want to earn another 10 minutes with you. So we can cut this conversation here, but I hope to be able to talk to you again. And he's only going to give you 1 or 2 responses. Oh, absolutely. Call so-and-so and get on my calendar for the next quarter. Or he'll say, no, I got another 10 minutes. Let's keep going if you have the time, right? Either way, it's about your own initiative and your own intentionality. And then you just keep following up on these conversations. So again, it's about intentionality and making sure that you make it happen. But level playing field here. That's how you can keep your network up. The other point with this feedback and managing the time, technology absolutely is a great tool, because now I don't have to pick up the phone and say, hey, Grace, that was outstanding. I can send her an email after we have done a Zoom, after we have done a phone call, and say, that was a great comment you made. Way to go. And it takes, 10 seconds to pen that email, and it's the same impact. So again, you're right. It takes a lot of time, but here's the deal, Sujata, and I think there are going to be a lot of leaders who will understand this now. Leadership is active. It is about engaging. And I will tell you that when I was a young pup coming up in this business, I used to hear managing directors that would take over this department or that department. I'm not going to get in your way. I don't really want to manage people. I just really want to engage more with the clients. And I used to think as a young associate, isn't that what managing director meant? Leadership is active, and leaders are going to realize that as we have been out of the office for 15 months now, as people come back in, it's not going to be so easy to just jump back into the same space that you were in and the same behavior. You have to allow for the fact that people have changed. They have thought about their experience. They have thought about who they are within that culture, within that building, on your team. You have to redefine, reevaluate, and rejuvenate culture as you go back. It's going to take a lot of time. Yes, ma'am, that is correct, if you choose to lead.
Yep. I also think Zoom and WebEx and Teams have also created an intimacy of meeting that wasn't there necessarily even when you were sitting across the table from somebody. I have found in some ways much more satisfying meeting with somebody through a Zoom connection than in person.
I could not agree more.
Yep. What approach have you taken when you have faced resistance, when you've tried to influence others, whether it's a subordinate or someone else in your organization?
Generally my approach has been to try again. And if I've tried 2 or 3 times and it really hasn't worked, then I step back and I re-examine, what am I doing? What are my motivations? Why is it not landing? Maybe it's one of those situations where I should not carry the paper, or I should not carry the message. I should let somebody else who might have a better engagement, better penetration with that relationship carry the paper. And again, sometimes you do have to move your ego out of the way, especially when you think about what you want to have done. And sometimes it's not about your touch or your getting it done. And if you can influence it through another direction, but you still get it done, then you still have been successful.
Often I find in the workplace, though, this is sort of a piggyback on that, and this happens more with women and people of color, I think, they may be successful in doing that and influencing other paths to getting what they think should be done, but they don't get the credit for it. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it's still satisfying to have influenced some outcome, but if you're not getting the credit for it, what's the point? Or how do you also make sure you're getting credit?
Right. Well, the way you can make sure that you're getting credit is for you to report the thing, whatever it is, right? So if you influenced or you ran a team and, it looks like somebody is thinking that somebody else did that, then you can send the email to the boss, or you can drop by the boss's office and say, listen, I'm so excited. I want to tell you what the team did, right? And, we couldn't have gotten this done if we hadn't done A, B, C, and D. I'm so proud of the team. And you get your credit. You're the one that's telling the story. So that's another way that you can communicate it. Make sure that you're the one that's telling the story. Nobody else should own your narrative but you.
Interesting. So we had a couple questions that are asking you to maybe give some more specific examples about a couple of your pearls. One of them is could you give a specific example of how you create clarity, short-term and long-term, in your business life? Because you talked about creating clarity.
Absolutely. So I am very intentional about making sure that I tell the team where we're going. Here's what I hope we can get done, or here's what I'm thinking the outcome looks like. If you guys have other thoughts about this, or you can make it better, I welcome any and all. But here's where we're going. Here's the timeline. Here's some of the things that I think we need to do in order to get there. But there are probably other steps, and I'm going to leave that to you all to define. But I don't care really how we get there, but here's where we need to be and by when. So that's what I mean by creating clarity, defining what success looks like. And if you don't know the end game, even defining along the way, as I gave the example in the talk, to say, here's what we're going to try to get done today or from 9 to 12. I'm defining success. I'm creating clarity about what we're trying to do in this 3-hour window. That's what creating clarity is all about, being very specific on what success looks like.
For people who are listening who may be less analytical and more creative, does that work for them too? And how do they translate sort of creativeness into setting, what does success look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you an example, since I'm also a musician, right? So I often say to my producer, I want something that has that gospel feel. I want it a little funky, but I want that gospel feel, right? And let's keep playing around with it until we get it. Well, success is playing around, trying different things until we find a gospel funky riff that we like, right? So I've defined what I'm looking for. And I've also defined the fact that we're going to try, that we're going to listen to a lot of different things until we get there. All of that is creative. I am not dictating to him that it has these chords and it has this timing. I've just said, here's the macro gospel funky feel, right? And then we keep trying things. So yes, it absolutely can work for a creative as well as it can work for someone who's doing something that's very specific.
That's a great example. And I appreciate you drawing on your creative side to give us that example. So the other pearl that someone was asking for a little more specific clarity around was, assuming you don't have a supportive leader or supervisor that's doing the things that you told them to do, how do you get comfortable with the idea of failure? That's something every person, every human being, and certainly every professional struggles with. So how do you get comfortable with failing?
Absolutely. So here's what you do. You can define success with a little bit more room, if you will, but you do it with that leader who is not a supportive leader. And I would argue that if you do not have a supportive leader, it's all the more important that you have this conversation up front. So here's the script. You say something like, we're trying to get a relationship with this client, but nobody at the firm has a relationship with this client. So I'd like to take that on, but we're going to define success as getting a meeting. This person has never given the firm a meeting. So we're defining success right now as just getting a meeting. And that way you don't define success as getting a piece of business with this client that has never done business with your firm, that has never given your firm the time of day. That's actually defining it in such a way that sets you up to potentially fail and give that unsupportive leader something to really criticize you about. But if you set it up differently, where you say success, just getting a meeting. Now you get the meeting and now you say, wow, we got a meeting. Nobody at the firm has ever done anything like that. So we got to give ourselves a hand on that. Now we got the meeting. So success is going to be getting them to tell us the 3 things that they care about most as a client. When they do X, Y, and Z business with our competitors, why do they do that? What's attractive about their product offering? What's attractive about their engagement? But if I can get them to tell me what's important, that's going to be huge, because nobody at the firm knows what's important to that client. You go have the meeting. They tell you what's success. Hey, you knocked it out of the park again, because we agreed. That's what success was, is finding that out. Now, the next thing you say is success is getting them to ask us to compete for this particular business, right? And now you start working on that. But each time you have defined the parameters in a way that maximizes your opportunity for success with this person that's not supportive, who now has to support and say that you got a meeting with a client that has never been a client of the firm, that you got them to tell you what they value the most, blah, blah, blah. So you're bringing this person along, Sujata, on your success team.
Yeah, and what I love about that is it's also instilling a lot of empowerment in the person. When you get to define success, you will be less afraid to take those chances because you are controlling that narrative and controlling your fate a little bit more. So I love that advice. One thing that's very striking about hearing you speak is, your level of confidence, your communication style. Obviously you've been in the profession and in a very difficult environment for many years, but, as you look back, how did you develop those skills? I participated in a panel recently on imposter syndrome, and these were with young professionals and trying to help them find ways to develop their confidence. And I don't know the magic formula, but what are some things you've done over the course of your career to develop that confidence and your outstanding communication skills?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm smiling because I am marveling at the fact that the imposter syndrome is back in our ecosystem again. I mean, it was the thing that everybody talked about in 1987. And I got to tell you, I heard it overwhelmingly in 2017 and 2018. And I kept thinking, where is this coming from? How can it be? We obviously have not done our jobs very well as seasoned professionals, that younger professionals now are struggling with this. Right. We haven't told the stories enough that you should never have the imposter syndrome. You should look at your facts. And the facts are, you got the opportunity. Nobody gave you the opportunity. You earned it. So you ought to know by now that you are all that. Nobody made a mistake, or nobody chose you because you're a woman, or nobody chose you because you were of color. They chose you because you were that good. You are all that in a bag of chips. So first of all, own that. Second of all, know that nobody knows everything. Everybody has to learn something for the first time. And if you now are being faced with a portfolio of things that you're learning for the first time, so you're learning it for the first time. And guess what? You have a track record of successful firsts. You rode a bike for the first time. You stood up and spoke in front of a group of people for the first time. You wrote a paper for the first time. You scrambled the egg for the first time. You've done a number of things for the first time successfully. And guess what? If you did it before, you'll be able to do it again. And the third piece of obliterating imposter syndrome is there's nobody walking around in the world over the age of 2 that have not made a mistake. And we all have made a mistake. We all have had disappointments. Making a mistake does not make you special. What makes you special is how and if you get up. You'll be surprised how many people fail to get up, and they let a mistake become a massive albatross around your neck. So you make a mistake, extract the learning. Sometimes you can only get the lesson if you go for the try, right? So now use it to invest in your next try and your probable success. So those are the things that you tell yourself to get rid of that imposter syndrome. And I'll tell you lastly, Sujata, I started really studying my industry and the people in it. And I started really listening when I was sitting in meetings and listening to what people said. And my takeaway in many cases was, wow, that didn't make any sense. Why did that person say that? Or, oh, that wasn't a smart comment. Or, oh, that was just a repeat of what somebody else said. So all of a sudden, I started looking at what was around me and what I saw, and I realized that I was being intimidated for no reason. That I was certainly capable and competitive, and I belonged in the room, and I belonged in the seat, and I belonged at the table. And you can own that.
Yep, that's a very equalizing factor when you start looking around and realizing these people you idolize and who have a lot of confidence are making mistakes or saying things that are wrong. We have time probably for just about one more question. We've got about a minute left. And a question that I had and somebody else asked as well is, what advice do you have for young people to find those sponsors and mentors and whatnot in an organization? And I know you talked a lot about that early in your presentation. How do you find those people? And I know you gave an example for yourself, but how do you find them and get them engaged with you?
Yes. So the mentor does not need to be within your organization. They just need to understand your context and know you very well in order to give you tailored advice that you can successfully execute. The sponsor must be within your organization. And the way that you can find a sponsor, first of all, study your organization for 2 weeks. Figure out who has a seat at the decision-making table, who does not have a seat at the decision-making table, but who are key influencers to those who are at that table. And third, who are the toxic people? Write all that down on one piece of paper. Second sheet of paper. Of the people on the first sheet of paper, who has visibility into your work? They don't need to be your boss, but they need to have some kind of visibility or be tangential into your work in order to have credibility behind closed doors. Because if I go in pounding the table for Sujata and everybody knows that we don't work together, I now have no credibility. Right. So they need to have some visibility into your work. And lastly, now you say, of those people who have a seat at the decision-making table, who have visibility into my work, who might I have an opportunity to engage with the most so I can start to build a sponsor relationship? And that's how you do it.
Terrific. That is incredibly helpful and very specific. So we appreciate it. On behalf of the Western New York Women's Foundation, we thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your pearls, and really appreciate your efforts. For our audience, please don't go anywhere. We have a lot of more programming left. So please stay right where you are on the same Zoom meeting. And we're going to take a quick look at some of our Change Maker sponsors now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And now we continue our salute to the women of Western New York. Women like Trisha Barrett, honored by What She's Made Of sponsor Roop, Bice, Palsgraf, and Cunningham. Whether she's mentoring young women, volunteering, or showing her Buffalo pride, it is clear to anyone in her presence she is made of spirit, thoughtfulness, and grace. Women like Levon Ansari, honored by What She's Made Of sponsor KeyBank. Levon has been a long-standing, passionate advocate and leader addressing issues of poverty and oppression in underserved communities within Buffalo and Western New York. During the pandemic, she has called on all of us to show our human excellence as we confront issues of entrenched institutional racism and the disparate impact that COVID-19 has had on those historically underserved by healthcare. Women like Lori Nasca, honored by What She's Made Of sponsor Athenix. A talented planner, organizer, and all-around people person, Lori's enthusiastic initiative, can-do attitude, and absolute professionalism always lead to positive experiences and good vibes for those around her. She also plays a vital role in Athenix's community initiatives, including the Western New York Women's Foundation's What She's Made Of event. Women like Stephanie Tisdale, honored by Western New York Women's Foundation sponsor M&T Bank. Stephanie is deeply engaged in diversity and inclusion strategic initiatives and achieving bank-wide goals for equity, inclusion, and workforce parity. She is generous in feedback, counsel, and connecting others to help others grow their careers and is an example of the bank's next generation of leaders. While we don't have time to feature every spotlighted woman during this program, You can visit the Western New York Women's Foundation's Facebook page to view a full gallery of all honorees as part of our Spotlight on Western New York Women. Thank you for all that you do for the community.
Hi, it's us again.
Quick reminder, if you haven't donated yet, there's still time to stand up for women in Western New York.
Click the donate button and give in support of your neighbor, your mom, your best friend, your sister.
Plus, donate tonight and you'll be entered to win this gorgeous pearl necklace from Reed's.
I hope you'll join me in advancing gender equality and moving Western New York forward. Again, thank you so much for your support, and hopefully next year we can see each other in person.
What She's Made Of 2021 is almost over, so where are you headed after the show? Our women-owned restaurant partners across the region are ready to take care of dinner, and many are offering discounts or specials throughout the week if you mention the Western New York Women's Foundation. So visit the Western New York Women-Owned Business Directory to find your next great meal. Up next, a special performance by Hayati Dance. Throughout the past year, Hayati Dance has offered virtual dance recitals to raise money for organizations focused on making life better for the women of Western New York. To date, Hayati Dance has raised hundreds of dollars in support of the Western New York Women's Foundation. Thank you for your creativity and support, Hayati Dance.
We would like to extend the sincere gratitude of the Western New York Women's Foundation for joining us this afternoon. Your support helps make our region a better place for women to earn, learn, and lead.
A special thank you to Carla Harris and Sujatha Yelamanchili for sharing their experiences and insights with us. This has been an inspiring and memorable afternoon for all of us. Thank you.
And thank you again to all of our supporters and sponsors that help make this event possible, especially presenting sponsor M&T Bank and our glass ceiling sponsors, Baker Hostetler, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, and Morgan Stanley.
We hope you will take the spirit of this event out into our community and help support other women.
You can do this by advocating for yourself and your colleagues in your workplace, as Carla shared with us today. Our All In initiative is here to help women into positions of leadership, so check out our website for more details.
You can also support women with the choices you make about where you shop and dine. Tonight and throughout this week, women-owned restaurants across Western New York will be offering discounts if you mention the Western New York Women's Foundation. We hope you will visit the Western New York Women-Owned Business Directory on our website and choose to shop local and support women tonight and throughout the year.
You can help improve the lives of women and children across our community by championing philanthropic support for organizations focused on gender equity, like Western New York Women's Foundation. You've already started doing this by joining us here today. We look forward to continuing to work with you and the rest of our community for the women in Western New York.
Thank you all, and good night.